I'll throw some more rocks.
Oh, will you now?
Just remember
to religious wars.
Just remember what Nodal just said about tricking you in fantasy worlds.
You all come across what looks like... Oh, here, first of all, let's erase the lines.
Oh, the pit went away.
And the pit, too. Rip the pit.
You can make a new one.
Come across what looks like a palace in the middle of the forest that towers up above the canopies of the trees. And as you get nearer to it, the first thing you realize is now you're actually walking along a path. A well-worn earthen path. And then you realize that there has actually been landscaping done. Like flowers and small shrubs specifically placed along the path. And then you realize the path itself is no longer crushed earth, but is laid with stonework. And that's when you start seeing the palace rise up in the distance.
Oh, good.
That's just convenient.
And what do?
You know, looking at this palace, it makes a lot of sense that we'd follow the moss and we'd find it.
I guess it's true.
There's probably like a barren stone palace on the exact opposite side of this plain.
Yep.
And as you continue marching towards it, who has... Make some rolls here. Who can beat a 16 passive perception?
No. Birdie can.
All of us.
I can.
Birdie can't because it's dark.
Oh,
Raazu
well then
can't.
Birdie can't.
My passive perception is 16.
All right.
Oh, wait. Is that a difficulty class, or is that I have to be higher than it?
No, that's the DC.
Yeah, that's my passive perception.
Then as you're walking along this now stone road leading up to this palace, you realize you're being watched. From up ahead in the trees, you see a large figure. And the last time you saw one of these figures, it was a zombie, and it was trying to trample you to death in a tomb. But now you see a fully alive centaur, hiding, using the shadows, hiding behind the trees. And you see he's got a bow drawn. But you spot him as you come up.
I'll instinctively go to message.
And message doesn't
Blink
work.
for a second. And then I'll just kind of hold my hands out to the group.
I didn't hear any of that. You cut out.
Which is
I
fine
just-
because message doesn't work.
Yeah, I hold out my hands to stop.
Yeah.
And Red brings you up to a stop. And Red, when that happens, looking at the centaur, he realizes that you've spotted him. And he starts backing away into the forest. Beyond the shadows where you can see.
And I'll yell out in Sylvan, "We don't mean any harm."
And there's no response.
No, continue walking then.
Okay.
What was that?
There's a centaur. It had a bow drawn on us, but it left as soon as he was aware that I saw him.
Well, keep looking.
And as you walk the path up to the palace, now and again you see similar shapes in the woods. It seems like they're just watching you walk by, keeping tabs on you for now. Is Adrex carrying our torch?
I probably have my my dim light torch out.
Okay.
Yeah, Adrex will light a torch. Why not? Bam. It's torched.
Nice. Good work.
There's no moat around the palace. No huge curtain wall with guards. You're able to walk up to the base of these sweeping stone stairs, as Red observes, covered in moss, straight up to the large wooden doors of the structure. On either side of it is a sconce holding an unlit torch. There's maybe 10 or 15 feet of cleared space around the base of the stairs where this road comes up through. But all around the sides of the palace, the trees pull up very close in, right next to the outside walls. And on the center of each of these doors is a large silver knocker.
Guess we knock.
Who's knocking?
I'll do it. Raazu steps forward and hefts the knocker and clunk, clunk, clunk.
Okay, you have to reach up above the level of your head and take this silver knocker in both hands. You pound it against the door. And as this happens, Red, you see several of the centaurs step out of the woods onto the path, blocking your egress. Can somebody in the Flumph party chat maybe link me to your loot sheet so I can get a bookmark of it? I'll just highlight in bright pink everything that's been stolen by pixies.
But because I speak the language, they can tell me in Pixie what they stole and how hilarious they find it.
Oh man, this is a nice ass loot sheet.
McDohl made that, I think.
Yeah, it's really well done.
I mean, we make him carry everything, so.
So we make him do the work too.
Oh, we don't. Wyvern scales. We gave those away already.
Does this asterisk by your flame arrow wand indicate that you don't have it currently?
Yeah, I believe there's a note underneath that says it's on loan.
On loan to the ranger. Okay. And the echo of this banging fades away. And the door opens inward into a very opulent and very well-lit hall. And as soon as the door begins to open, you hear the sounds of song and celebration inside. Like a vast party is in full swing. The floor inside is smoothed stone, going through this main hallway, and there are several archways with large wooden doors on the side leading deeper into the palace. And instead of a carpet rolled out, there are rushes of leaves and dried flower petals strewn down on the ground. The gentleman who opened the door is a perhaps 15 or 16 foot tall tree monster? Question mark? And his movements are very slow and very deliberate as he's pulling the door open with what looks like a hand, but is actually the end of a tree branch that has maybe too many fingers and probably had more greenery and leaves in its younger years. And following the trunk of this creature upward, you can see a gnarled face. And it looks down and opens its great black eyes. And it speaks in Sylvan. And it says that you all were expected. Except he says it very slow and tree-like. You all were expected.
Oh, it's just like a tree would
Adrex.
sound.
Much sooner.
Adrex turns his head and just looks upward, amazed.
You are standing flabbergasted in the doorway. Birdie does what?
I was just say Birdie is like standing right behind Adrex, kind of using him as a human shield.
Oh, Dragonborn shield.
Adrex doesn't speak Sylvan, so I don't know.
Yeah, the tree is speaking Sylvan.
So the one who's got us is red.
Yeah, okay. So, right, because you specifically speak fairy. Okay, so, I'll just say, I'm sorry, we were detained by some sprites.
Sylvan is like very common.
And the thing very slowly steps back and pulls the door open. The door stands invitingly, leading inside where you can hear the sounds of merriment happening. That's my dog.
That's the sounds of merriment.
Yeah,
That's
that's as merry as he gets.
Raazu, step inside.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
As the last of you are inside, he very slowly closes the door. And as he does so, you can see that he's peering out at the centaurs who have amassed up on the path behind you. Maybe 5 or 6 of them. Then with a loud crash, the door comes to a close. And he puts a large wooden bar down on the inside, like a giant-sized latch. Then he turns and stands with his back to the door and tells you, "The princess awaits your arrival." And then moves and speaks no more, and has become indistinguishable from a tree, but for the fact that it's growing up out of this smooth stone floor.
All right. Apparently we were expected.
All right.
Yeah.
I don't quite understand why, but here we go.
And I'll lean over to Windy. Is this one of those don't eat anything sort of situations?
Maybe. It probably can't hurt, but in my experience, if they want you to do something, you're going to end up doing it.
Right. But still, probably best if we don't eat or drink anything.
Probably best
eat
to
it
not
with
eat
us.
anything.
Or drink, right?
Yes.
Why?
What's the worst that could happen?
You could end up trapped here forever.
Oh. Yeah, Adrex, don't do that.
Do you have food on you? In your pack?
I've got some rations, yeah.
It's better than
I mean,
a working prison camp, that's for sure.
It's less like eating or drinking anything, and it's more like don't put yourself in anyone else's. Like, don't let people do you favors.
And no matter how quiet and how much you try to whisper, every one of your words echoes off of the vastness of this hall you're walking. And for a moment, it's very shocking because the sound of your whispers echoing hit your ears even above the din of the celebration happening on the other side of the double doors, the end of this hall.
I love how racist it sounds, too. Like, awareness... eat anything, could end up here for... Just a twinge of racism.
In other news,
First of all,
Peanut
it's
and I just watched the movie Get Out recently. So what's next?
I guess we head toward
Yeah,
the
yeah.
sounds of merriment.
Let's go to the revelry.
Okay.
Let's go meet the princess.
And when you get up to the end of the hallway, everybody make me a dexterity check.
Oh, I'm bad at those. And that's 2 dice, apparently.
Oh, and Adrex falls onto a
Into a 5-foot deep pit.
a rake and it hits him in the face.
That is the first time one of these wedge rolls has actually benefited.
How'd it go?
It's a 19, apparently.
When did you
17 for red.
get? Red got
Just a
17.
10 for me.
When you got a 10? Birdie?
7.
A dexterity check?
Yeah.
You're a level 5 rogue. All
You
right,
said
all
not a
right.
save,
Not
Rick.
gonna
If
argue.
it was a save, I would have been higher.
Raazu,
14.
14. The doors on either sides of the hallway, you pass probably 4 or 5 sets of these. They mirror each other on the left and right sides of the hallway, as well as the double doors at the end of the hallway. These are all smaller. They're still a little bit larger than people-sized, but they're not the hulking 20-foot tall doors where Raazu had to reach up with both hands to grasp the knocker. Who's actually opening the door?
Raazu will, since she is, I guess, kind of leading the group.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Raazu is our designated door opener.
And these ones open outward. They open into the hallway you're standing in. and you pull them open, and there is a vast and wonderful Feywild reverie happening inside. All manner of Fey and Sylvan creatures. Predominantly the humanoid ones look to your eyes like elves, but slightly different than... I mean, none of you are really familiar with elves in the first place, are you?
No.
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 Well, we'll put it this
Not
way.
really.
Have any of you met an elf before?
I think we said Adrex learned rangery stuff from human.
From a human? Okay.
No.
See, if none of you have met an elf before, then yeah, the humanoid creatures in this room, they look about what you've been led to believe an elf would look like. They're kind of a medium build, maybe about red size, slender, fair skin and hair, and pupilless eyes. And the dress in this room is beyond opulent. It looks like everybody in this room tried to dress fancier than everybody else. The women are wearing enormous hoop skirts with ruffles, covered in ruffles and feathers, and the men are wearing suits of great bright colors with long flowing cloaks, some of which are adorned to look like wings of a bird or an insect. Many people are wearing masks over their face. And besides the elves, you see all kinds of other creatures as well. Humanoid animal creatures, similar to the pigmen that you met previously. But these would be woodland creatures. Foxes and wolves. Birds and things. Wendy, you don't notice any Aarakocra amongst these bird people. Very notably, you don't see anything of orcish, goblin, or dragon descent. But there are satyrs, there are fairies and pixies and sprites, tiny creatures. You see just all manner of weird and wonderful things in this room. At the far end of the room is a large throne with opulent cushions adorned with flowers, leaves, and grasses on it. And sitting it, you see one of these elven women. Instead of hair flowing off her head and down over her shoulders and along her back, there are yellow flower petals instead. She's holding a scepter that ends in a yellow dandelion, and she's tapping it against one of her legs very impatiently. She looks to be the only person in the room who's not having any fun.
And then there's us standing out like sore thumb.
Yep. And no
Wendy
sooner
looks great.
No sooner do you realize you're standing out like a sore thumb that this elven woman sitting on the throne at the far end of the hall sees you, stands up, points her scepter out, and she screams for Vrifor to seize you as you have mussied her carpet.
Ugh.
Looking behind you, most of you did okay. Wendy and Birdie tore up this carpet of freshly laid leaves and dried petals. It's very clearly the two of them, too, because Wendy is hopping. And you can see Birdie's tail dragging along behind him. Vrifor turns out to be a large and very muscular centaur. But his features look much less humanoid about his face. He looks like his face even has some very horse-like features to it. But he's wielding 2 spears. And he's wearing heavy barding. And he clumps up towards the lot of you. The whole time, this yellow woman at the end is screaming about how you've mussied up her carpet, and the rest of the sounds in the room begin to fall silent.
Uh-oh. Birdie makes his cloak bright yellow.
Bright yellow?
Yeah. No reason.
And the princess calls out for Vrifor to halt. Vrifor does so. And for a moment, all eyes in the room are on Birdie.
He makes it bright pink.
And her eyes narrow. And she calls out for you to bring her the little trickster. And this centaur does. He very diligently starts marching forward until he's within a few feet of you. What happens next?
I make the cloak
Just keep
Right.
trying colors.
purple.
Sorry.
You make the cloak bright purple, and you hear an ocean of gasps. Monocles popping out of eyes throughout the room. Birdie, make me an insight check.
That's a 7.
A
Nice.
7.
Yeah.
What's your passive perception?
19.
19. You hear this ocean of gasps, and you realize looking out, because you didn't get this reaction the first 2 times you played with your cloak, and you don't see this shade of purple anywhere in the room. There's lots of blues and dark indigos and even some pinks and various reds and oranges, but nothing purple. And at this point, the centaur is leaning down, and he speaks in Sylvan and says, "The princess has requested your attention, little one." And he begins moving forward to grab you by the arm.
I make the cloak. He looks at Birdie, looks at his party, like, quick, give me a color.
Red goes to cast message and it doesn't work.
He's like, quick, I need a color.
Do you stop this centaur
Chartreuse.
from leading you forward?
No, he's bigger than me.
Then he
Try chartreuse.
Purple.
then he does. He grabs you by the arm. Not like he doesn't yank it out of the socket. Like he's not dragging you. More like he's leading you. And as he marches you forward, what does the rest of you do?
Watch.
Standing
I'm
in the door.
going forward too. I was told the princess wanted to see me.
So you're coming in behind the centaur?
Yeah.
Raazu steps alongside Birdie. Or not Birdie, Wendy.
And as you're marching
Red's
up,
just gonna
Rez what?
just gonna stay where he is.
So you're gonna stay back at the
Adrex.
door?
Adrex will stay where he is at first,
Mm-hmm.
then looks at Red, and then looks at the party walking away, and then looks at Red again, and then scampers after the party.
Okay. As you guys are marching forward, off to the left, you see a large banquet table filled with delectable-looking foodstuffs, mostly fruits and desserts, sweet things. But here and there, you do also see choice meats splayed out. And I mean, these tables have been sitting here for a while, and the partygoers have done considerable damage, but that does nothing to soften the pleasant smells and sights coming from it, especially considering you've been marching through the woods for 2 goddamn days, and all you've had to eat was potatoes boiled with the skin on in salt and butter.
And we're probably fake at that.
The centaur marches you forward, and this princess the whole time, I mean, she's sitting on her throne with her legs crossed, just tapping this scepter very impatiently.
Birdie makes the
Go ahead.
cloak yellow again.
Okay. And it might be too little too late at this point. When you feel the centaur let go of your hand, he tromps up next to the throne, but several paces away from it. Like, he's not standing right next to Her Majesty. In fact, you realize nobody is standing right next to her. She's got about a 3 or 4 foot bubble around her. And the centaur turns around and stands at attention. And this woman on the throne just looks at you. And eventually she speaks. And she speaks in common. She says, "One kneels when one is in the presence of royalty."
Birdie kneels because he's terrified again.
What do the rest of you do?
Raazu does likewise.
I'll kneel, yeah.
Red's
Sure.
you're still way back at the door, right, Red? Is Red still way back at the door?
Destil?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're kneeling at the door. Is anybody not taking a knee?
Adrex will after a moment.
Wendy, don't your legs bend the other way?
It's very interesting and very tricky.
Then she continues to speak in common, and you hear muttering all throughout the room. Those of you who speak Sylvan and want to try to overhear, I'll let you make a perception check, but a lot of languages being spoken are not Sylvan, so make the check at disadvantage.
Can I hear any Pixie?
Not from where you're standing, no, but Pixie, I'll count it as Sylvan for that purpose.
16 on perception.
Okay.
23.
23. Okay, now, the woman on the throne, she's speaking to Birdie specifically. And she seems very, very upset with him. And she says, "We were told to expect you 5 days ago. 5 days. You've kept me waiting." Well, have you nothing to say?
We got lost?
And when you say that you got lost, a wave of sniggering fans out through the hall. Red and Windy, as you're trying to pick up on what these little side discussions are, these partygoers who are whispering amongst themselves. They're speaking amongst themselves, questioning whether or not Princess Dandelion is likely to have them executed. And wouldn't that just be such fun?
Of course.
Windy in particular, since you rolled higher on perception, they have a few creative ways that might take place.
I'll note them for future reference.
Okay. Birdie, your answer seems to have just enraged the princess even more. She says, "How does one get lost when one is given explicit directions?"
Raazu looks to the other party members like, what?
We were not given in directions. We just kind of appeared in your
You
room.
dare to call us a liar in our own house!
Shame, Birdie.
Rip Birdie.
Speak, or I will have your tongue pulled out and enchanted. I will have your words one way or the other.
Who told you we were coming? Because I don't know what's going on.
Then, she shoots back at you. You would question me when I ask for answers?
I'm trying to get some context in which to give you the answers.
Oh, Bridges rolled to kill you.
What's Birdie's goal in the conversation?
To not die?
To not die? Make an insight check.
To be fair, that's completely consistent with his character.
Oh, yeah?
Oh man, I almost got a 20. That would be an 8.
An 8? Whatever you're doing right now is not getting you there. Every time you give her an answer, she cuts you off and shouts you down. And then continues to berate you for refusing to answer her.
Birdie's just sitting there whimpering, like, wraps himself up in his cloak and just kind of gets in the fetal position.
Okay, so he curls up on the floor. Does anybody else step in? At the sight of this...
Yeah, Red will walk forward while that's happening,
Okay.
as he gets close, when he gets in line with the rest of his companions, he'll bow low and he'll say in Sylvan, "I'm sorry, Your Highness. We, of course, would never accuse you of lying.
I would
Nor
not
some
hear the
servants.
language of the woods on the tongue of a snake."
Don't you find snakes in the wood?
Does Adrex say that to her?
Yeah. Adrex totally would.
Okay.
Well, he would just sort of utter that without thinking.
At that, when Adrex starts getting a little bit lippy to himself, not intentionally, in a hilarious and very lovable Andy Dwyer kind of way, she calls for her chef to come forth. A side door off to a serving area opens up, and two very, very obese, very fat Mokedon people come through, both dressed in very dirty aprons, wearing soiled chef hats. Not dirty like Barf from Nickelodeon dirty. Dirty like they've been working feverishly all day on this banquet. And they each come in and they take their knee next to Her Highness. She says, "Roll out enough dough that my guests can dine on kobold pie this night for dinner."
Birdie just wails.
She turns back to Red. "And you, have you anything else to say?" And you see her eyes narrow at you as she says it.
No, Highness.
What language did you respond in?
Common.
Common? She nods once and says, "This one at least is intelligent enough to learn a lesson." Then she directs the same question to Red. "You were expected 5 days ago. Why are you late?"
Your lands, as powerful and enchanting as they are, warp the perception of time of people that don't travel here frequently. Between that and our own incompetence, and I'm afraid it must be our incompetence, not yours, we did not make it timely arrival.
Your answer elicits laughter from some parts of the crowd. The princess responds that it is wisdom that small-minded creatures can speak to their own ignorance. She points down at Birdie with her scepter. "Stand this one up. Cease its blubbering, and I shall forgive your trespasses."
I'll grab Birdie by the back of the neck, kind of like the scruff of the neck, pull him up, dust him off, do my best to not make the rest of the hall dirty as I'm doing so, whisper into his ear, "Just go with brown," and then bow low again.
Just bow low, and then I follow his lead, turn my cloak around.
At this point, she calls for the doors at the far end of the hall to be closed. She says that the party should resume, and provided the small kobold can behave itself over the course of the next few hours, she will perhaps reconsider her dessert options. And then she sits back down on her throne, resuming the stance that you saw her in when you emerged. The music starts back up, the conversation starts back up, and the party looks to resume. So now what does Birdie do?
He's just gonna sit there and be as small as he can possibly be.
Sit there in front of the throne?
Oh no, he's gonna hide behind Adrex.
Okay.
Adrex is very big.
I thought we were still standing there in front of her. Sorry.
You are at the moment. Right now,
Yeah, I'll kind of motion for the entire group to leave this part of the room.
yeah.
Get over towards one of the, I don't know, do they have long tables with hors d'oeuvres or anything on them?
Yeah, there are many banquet tables laid out with all manner of, I mean, to your eyes, strange and weird foodstuffs, but nothing foul-smelling. Nothing that you twig as being poisonous.
Yeah, I'll move everyone over to near one of those, but not eat, but not make it look like it's, try and not be like, hold my nose up to anything, just,
Okay. So this
who
is going to
told
come
us
up
we were
in the
not?
near future. Not to interrupt.
Oh, good.
Who's gay? Any of you?
Raazu is very ace.
Raazu's ace.
Yeah.
She's married to conquests.
Yep.
All right. So go ahead and have your conversation now.
Haven't really thought about it, actually.
Yeah, me either. I mean, honestly, let's be real. Red's probably pansexual.
He only sleeps with cookware.
Wow, that happened. I mean, if I'm going the complete anti-Keelian route, he's... he probably hasn't slept with anybody. So
If you're going the anti-Keelian route, he only sleeps with people who aren't trying to murder him. Okay. So you go over by the hors d'oeuvre table. And what happens over there? Are you guys trying to kind of find a place to talk amongst yourselves for a minute? Or are you just hungry?
I was mostly just getting everyone out of the way of the princess.
Adrex
Okay.
is staring at the food.
Raazu has an arm. Raazu has a hand on his shoulder.
Okay.
Birdie's trying not to have a panic attack.
Well, that went well.
What did I do?
Raazu smiles a little bit and says very pointedly, "In what universe does that constitute well?"
Birdie's
why
not
are you
dead.
changing your cloak
Birdie
color?
currently isn't in the kitchen being baked into a pie. I call that progress.
I was
That's
trying
kind
to
of
hang on
agree
to
with
it.
this. It's
Sorry, what was
infuriating, but I can't argue with that.
As you're having this discussion, the most gorgeous woman any of you have ever seen approaches your group. She's an elven woman, but instead of her skin just being fair, it looks almost silvery. She has white hair. She's wearing white clothes, and at first you think she's wearing just another bizarre costume, like you've seen a million times. But no, on second glance, you realize she's wearing white leathers. She's wearing the armor of, say, a forest ranger. And only then do you see the two slender knives hanging on either side of her. She approaches the group. She picks up a large decanter sitting nearby and fills a crystal goblet with the contents. And then she regards you all as she drains it.
Hello.
Did you say that in common?
Yeah.
And you see her drink catch in her throat a little bit as she tries to stifle a laugh. She holds her fingers up to her lips daintily. She responds in common. She says, "Forgive me, my darling, but you bark like a dog."
Yeah. I've gotten that before.
And you see her cast a sly glance back at the princess on the throne. And she says, "Your hostess will consider it a great insult if you don't mingle at her party."
Isn't that what we're doing now?
She drinks of her goblet again. She says, "To be fair, There are a great many things that our hostess considers to be grievous insults.
I'm getting that, yes.
Oh, thank you for the warning. And Red will just say, try not to get lean down to Birdie. Try not to get baked into a pie. And he'll wander off to talk to random people. Be as charming as he can be.
The elf woman chuckles at Red a little bit. She regards Birdie then, as she speaks to him in Draconic. A very bad Draconic. Like somebody who watched dragon anime for a couple of years and now they're convinced they can speak Draconic.
That's good.
She says, "Don't worry, little one, I'm sure you're delicious."
Birdie just...
Red?
He does not... No.
Adrex pats Birdie on the head.
Red, Adrex, and Birdie need a charisma saving throw.
Charisma saving throw.
Yes, sir.
You know, it's weird. I have proficiency on that, and I
Where's
don't know why.
mahogany?
Is this against magic or a magical effect?
Neither.
Okay.
22. Oh, I don't have proficiency in it. Okay. Good. That makes
17.
more sense.
17, how'd Birdie do?
18.
The beauty of this elven woman is captivating. And for the brief moment she's here talking to all of you, you can't take your eyes off of her. However, you all do resist being charmed. Red, you decide to break away and go mingle with some other guests. Is there anybody in particular you're looking to talk to as far as like what type of creature or what language they might speak?
Well, I'm not going to speak... Yeah, I'll see if there's anyone... Is anyone speaking in common or any other non-Sylvan language I understand?
Let's make a roll here.
That would be Abyssal, Draconic, or Giant.
There is a conversation you'll be able to join where they're speaking Giant.
Oh, excellent. I'll go over to that group.
Okay.
And I'll introduce myself as... My name is Red. I am a recent guest, as I'm sure you're all well aware.
What is Birdie doing after the beautiful elf tells him that she's sure he's delicious?
He takes 2 steps away from her.
Okay.
Just a step away. Like, he doesn't like being called delicious. He responds back, "Thank you for the compliment," in Draconic.
And when you respond in Draconic, she claps her hands together a little bit, like she's excited, and she says, "You speak the language so well. You must come and meet some people."
Birdie looks up at Adrex.
Come on, Birdie. And Adrex pulls his hand.
You,
Go get into some trouble.
so the two of you are going.
No! Birdie fights him, but not like... It's like kind of like a small child trying to pull away from an adult.
What does Windy do?
I'm gonna sneak into the kitchens. And I'm gonna find out how you make this fairy food, because that seems crazy.
Okay, it's probably not going to be possible to sneak in. You don't have like a cover of darkness or anything. What you might be able to do is loiter by one of the door you saw the 2 Moakton come out of, which leads to a small serving area. You might be able to hang out next to that door, and you're pretty sure nobody's watching it. You might be able to slip in without anybody seeing you.
Yeah, I'm gonna go for it.
Okay, make me that stealth check.
Alright. Good thing elves aren't known for their perception.
Right.
That's a 19.
19. What is Raazu doing?
Raazu is going to excuse herself from she was having with that woman, and then she's going to go off in another direction.
Okay, well, there's lots of directions.
Yeah, she is going to... She doesn't really, find one looking for anyone in particular, but let's just say offhand that she runs into a satyr or something.
So you're going to go bump into a satyr?
Not intentionally, mind, but
Oh, okay. I like where this is going. Wendy, you hide out next to the servant's door.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like anybody's paying much attention to you. These people don't want to see the servants at all. That's the sense you get.
Mm-hmm.
The princess watches you for a little while, and you see disapproval on her face, but her attention is split over a lot of places. And in a moment, you manage to try the door. You find that it's unlocked, and you slip through it back into a kind of dimly lit hallway where you see tables lined up with, at this point, previous courses that have been served and then removed. You're not sure which door or which hallway goes where, but at the end of this hall, a door off to your right, there's light pouring out of it, and you hear the clanging of metal in there.
That sounds good.
Looking into that room, you do see a very large, and right now, very dirty and well-used kitchen area with a large brick oven in the center of it. The heat in this room is sweltering. And you see several Moakton servants going about their tasks here. So far, none of them have seen you. None of them have a reason to be watching the door.
Alright, I'm gonna step in.
Okay. And do what?
And I'm gonna... There was only a few of them in there, right?
2 of them came in at her behest. One of them had the big chef hat on. You don't see the chef in here at the moment.
And I'm gonna kind of like pull one aside, and I'm gonna say, "You seemed a little overworked. I thought maybe I could help."
In what language?
Common.
In common? When you speak, their work ceases, and you see 5 of them in this room going about mostly cleaning tasks at this point. They've cleared the first several courses away. They're cleaning all of the flatware, and silverware, and things. And you surprise them, but they don't understand common. They exchange glances and then look back at you.
We've been hanging out with the Moakton a little while.
Okay.
I'll try a few halting words of that.
Strangely, they don't understand that either. But one of them...
Pixie?
Pixie they get. And they respond to you in Sylvan as one of them approaches you, wringing out a dish rag in his hands. He tells you that guests aren't allowed back in the food preparation area. You might anger the princess. He asks if you're lost.
And I say no. And I say, I was hoping you could help me out. I'm worried I might anger the princess no matter what. I was looking for someone to kind of explain how things work around here.
Make an insight check.
Alright. Oh, actually, I'm good at that. $27?
One of the Moakton looks out the hallway, up and down, either side. What's funny is when I describe these scenes, like I'm a very visual speaker, so I like actually lean forward and look around when I said that, even though I'm alone in this room.
No, I got you.
Yeah. Yeah, he pulls the door closed, and he pulls it closed very gingerly, so it doesn't make a sound.
Yeah.
The Moakton tell you that they're able to help you with this. That they can help you navigate some of the princess's more wild moods. But you definitely get the sense that they're playing you. Something is very wrong about this.
Okay.
You're pretty sure they're going to get you into trouble, and then it's going to improve their station somehow. Which tells you a little bit about how things work around here. Everybody's always vying for the princess's... Like, there's a hierarchy. People in her favor and people in not. And they can earn some brownie points by getting you in trouble somehow.
I'm gonna kind of play along a little bit.
Okay.
And at the next opportunity, I'm just gonna kind of like kind of telling them the story of how we got here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to mention that there was a pixie that delayed us from coming to help see the princess, and actually went straight to the princess and brought them some of our gear, our materials that we had brought over. I'm not mentioning the silver because I figured that might be a faux pas.
Okay. Before the pixie, you said you mentioned the story of how you got here. Do you mention the White Mother?
No, because these Moakton didn't speak Moakton, and that's
Okay.
freaking me out.
Gotcha. So you tell her that this pixie waylaid you and
Waylaid us, went to see the White Mother, had the opportunity to tell to tell the princess that we were here, and didn't do so. Essentially, I'm trying to give them some other target to play one over on.
make a deception check. You don't have to roll high on this one. Moakton are easy to fool, apparently.
Well, you know.
I mean, they're trusting creatures by nature.
Also, it helps that this totally happened. 7.
Okay. You learn... They explain to you that the reason the princess is so upset is that she was told she was being gifted a very extravagant present for her birthday celebration. And it arrived 5 days late. The 5 of you were meant to be this present. She was being given a gift of 5 mortal playthings. The Moakton are especially harried because she has been throwing these feasts for 5 days now.
Waiting for us to show up.
Exactly.
Nice.
She's
Does she-
exhausted. All of the kitchen staff are exhausted. And she's now like 200 names down her initial guest list. Like, she's now partying with people that she despises.
Does the Smokin mention who told her that? To expect us?
Very pointedly not. Only that she was expecting you. You were
Okay.
meant to be a birthday present.
Alright.
So you're in there in the kitchen shooting the shit with the Moakton. They're trying to get one over on you. You're trying to get one over on them.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Raazu,
Hey.
you do bump into a satyr. As you're sitting down. Let's get this out of the way. Wendy's already out of the room. Is anybody else eating in the room?
Not yet.
No.
Nobody else is eating. Russell, you do bump into a satyr.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a fat little thing. A sad, lonely, little just clump of a satyr. He's balding, but he's got like a comb over. He's holding a plate of what looks like some delicious little treats, little pastries with pastel-colored icing and bits of fruit sitting in them. And make me a charisma check. I mean, I'm assuming Raazu doesn't have many social graces, but she is a paladin.
Use your feminine wiles.
My
It's pretty easy to hit on a satyr.
I'm not trying to. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's harder, actually.
14.
A 14?
Yeah.
He comes up, and he's speaking in halting common.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell he's very, very nervous. And he tells you that he has brought these treats for this, the vision of loveliness that I spotted from across the room. And he bows slightly. And is casting nervous glances up at you.
Raazu shakes her head slightly and says, "Thank you, but that won't be necessary. I'm not hungry right now."
And he clasps his head with his hand and begins muttering something to himself. In Sylvan, so you don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
But then he turns and trudges away from you and bothers you no more.
Raazu is very uncomfortable here. And she remembers the warnings that Wendy and Red gave to not eat anything. So that's why she was doing that.
Can't believe you burned a satyr.
She's really out of her element here.
Having had this little encounter with the satyr, you're kind of brushing that off. Let's hopefully try to forget that happened. You turn around, and you realize that one of the lady elves has witnessed the exchange. She asks you, she's also speaking common, she asks if you speak the tongue of satyrs.
Raazu shakes his head. No, I don't.
Very notably, this woman is not wearing finery. She's dressed much like you are, actually. Maybe not quite so heavy of armor. But she definitely has armor. She's wearing a sword and a knife at her side. She has big, thick boots. She still looks very nice. She's not dirty. She doesn't have miles of trail on her the way you do. But she has her hair tied up, and she's definitely looks like a warrior.
This is probably more Raazu's speed right here. She nods, says, "What can I do for you?"
She introduces herself as Bel Ataka.
Bel Ataka.
She tells you that the satyr's name is Bo, and that you shouldn't be offended by his advances. He's pretty much a lost cause. Everybody thinks so.
Well, I mean, not all of us are. Not all of us can be the strongest, the brightest, or the.
Oh, she assures you that Bo is neither. She tells you that his prospects for romance at this point are limited to... And you can see she's fishing for a word that's not going to offend you. But the one that she decides on is mortals. And even there, he is struck out.
Well, it is a pity, Ani. I suppose I'm not really too versed in those kind of matters. I mean, my mind and my heart on much simpler things, to be honest. You know, war and warfare.
She very much doubts that, because she doesn't see how you could fight so effectively with such a heavy and unwieldy weapon. And she motions to your halberd that you're carrying.
Raazu takes a deep breath through her nose and then shakes her head. You'd be surprised.
Make an insight check.
I mean, this weapon has felled many of the orc kind.
We can brag about it in a minute. Just make the insight check first.
Insight check ills. 15.
A 15.
Your hand was over the die. I couldn't.
I know. I was trying to see what number it was. I don't actually need you to say it. You say you'd be surprised, and you see she's taken aback a little bit. You think she's taken offense at the comment. As though, what could you possibly have to teach her about the ways of warfare? And then you're going to continue on to brag about how many orcs you've killed?
Yep.
She listens politely, diplomatically, for a moment. And when you're done bragging about your orcish exploits, do you embellish these exploits? Or do you just tell them like they were?
Raazu would tell it like it is, basically. Not really embellishing.
And she says that she's sure for your kind, those are indeed mighty feats of strength. And she congratulates you on them.
So what drew you to me?
And she makes no qualms about it. You're wearing heavy armor and carrying a large weapon.
I mean, if you want, I can give a demonstration of my skill.
She considers the thought for a moment. And then she asks you, what, right here in the hall? And you can tell
Obviously
she's
not.
trying to goad you into something.
Well, obviously not. This isn't the time or the place.
She asks how many elves you've bested.
Takes a deep breath and then shakes her head. None.
She smiles and says, then you truly haven't had a real fight yet.
Funny, the one of the orcs that was eventually killed by my hand said the same sort of thing. Called me a virgin, he did.
She says that orcs are crude and brute creatures given to braggadocio.
They really are. They are. Raazu emphatically agrees.
She asks you what the right time and place might be for a demonstration of your skills.
Perhaps after the party's wound down, somewhere else, somewhere other than this room.
To that, she laughs a little bit. She says, do you suppose you could convince Her Royal Highness, which she says a little snottily to your ear. Do you suppose you could convince Her Royal Highness to end the party?
She doesn't seem to be the type that is convinced by anything except her own whim.
Then you are as perceptive as you are strong. She says, though, should the opportunity arise, she would be happy to meet your challenge.
Very well.
She takes one of the knives off of a nearby serving table, takes a napkin and gingerly wipes the butter or cream or whatever on it, holds it up to her head, cuts off 2 strands of hair, and then she hands you the hair and the knife.
Mm-hmm.
And she waits for you to do something with it.
Forgive me, I'm not very well versed in your customs.
She nods. She says, allow me. And now she's approaching you with this knife, blade first, heading towards your neck.
Holds up a hand.
Which hand?
The one I literally lifted my right hand as I was saying that, and that's the hand that's got her mark on it.
Okay. At that, you see her eyes get wide when she sees the mark. You definitely see recognition there, but she doesn't say anything. But she explains that she's going to take a strand of your hair.
Okay.
And this will bind your agreement, no?
Raazu can't very well back down now, so yeah.
Okay, and you lower your hand, and she takes the knife and takes a much... I'm assuming, does Raazu have long fur coming off of her head?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
and she
fairly
takes
long.
one of the long... What color is it?
Black.
Takes a long strand of black fur. Places the knife back on the table. Make another insight check. As you are navigating the eccentricities of Sylvan Court.
16.
Very notably, she did not draw her own knife to do this. She picked one up off of the table. You're not sure what the significance of that is, but it gives you pause and tells you that drawing your weapons in this place would be even a worse idea than it sounds.
Yeah. That makes sense.
As she trades her strands of hair for yours and says, then we are bound. I would have your name.
Raazu, she says very simply, plainly.
She asks, rather, she begs that you forgive her if she cannot speak a word of your tongue. She would not like the feel of your name on her lips. She asks what your name means.
It's a name.
Someone windy feels pain.
She agrees that it's a name, but she asks what is the meaning of the word Raazu in your tongue.
Really, the name doesn't mean as much as the as the titles that surround it. Very notably, she very notably did not give any titles or rank along with that.
Make a persuasion check.
16.
16. You're basically speaking gibberish to her. When you tell her it's just a name, it doesn't have a particular meaning. At first, she thinks you're lying to her, that you're trying to withhold this information. But after a few minutes of explaining what the ranks and the titles mean in Hobgoblin society, she starts to see it's just a cultural difference between her kind and the lesser races.
Of course.
She tells you that she's going to call you by Gordwin. She tells you that this is a name which, in one of the more... She gives you the name of a type of sylvan creature that is particularly warlike and violent, and therefore not invited to these kinds of shindigs. But in their tongue, the word Gordwin means foundling friend.
Okay.
And you can spell that however you want.
Mm-hmm.
She tells you that.
Birdie and Adrex.
Yes, sir.
Birdie, are you still kind of peeing yourself?
A little bit, yeah.
That hasn't stopped happening?
Well, he's calmed down a little bit now that he's... So... He's not, like, wailing and gnashing his teeth. It's kind of come to the realization that he can't...
There is music,
Can't run
yes.
away.
There is music, alright.
Yes, there are harpists in the room, and every so often there will be a singer.
Okay.
But no percussion, nothing harsh. It's not meant to drown out the conversation. It's meant to be just a backdrop to the conversation.
Okay. Alright.
You're taking over. The two of you are taken over to a group of armored individuals. They're all carrying weapons. One of them is wearing plate. At first, you think this individual is a Goliath. He's that big. When you get closer, though, you realize he doesn't just have dark skin. His skin is actually covered in tree bark. And what you thought from a distance was dark green hair turns out to be moss. And he's
wild.
some kind of a tree man, but much closer to the humanoid part of the spectrum than the Guardian from before. The elf introduces the two of you in her faltering Draconic. And then she realizes she didn't get your names.
Adrex. And
Birdie.
Adrex does a bow and then a curtsy and then a bow again. And then apologizes, saying, I'm not used to these kinds of social situations.